I was thinking about, I was like, man, this is about people. Like, these are all exceptional people. And Ismael, I'm gonna pay you props on this. I went and interviewed the artists that you've worked with, and they all have a very similar story. Well, it all started with a call from Ismael.
I needed an artist. I needed where to do it. So the artisan. I needed the tech, and I needed the UX, and I needed where to do it. So I needed it all.
What did you have?
No stuff. Yeah, exactly.
When I started Trame, the objective was to identify the opportunity at the intersection of technology and culture, starting from design, starting from crafts. Everything I did was put in the bricks.
The joy that came out of the beginnings of ArtBlocks, in the ArtBlocks Discord, where this is before it became financialized, that moment where people were going down the rabbit hole and discovering generative art and discovering the artists and discovering just kind of this world, this intersection. I truly believe that any brand in the world can bring that moment to his or her audience. You know, when I met Isma in December at Art Basel, I say this to this day, I think a lot of people get what he talks about, what I talk about. I think people get it, but I don't think there's another person on the planet that truly has the background to do it.
We know there are people who really care about craft and care about creativity and sharing this creative form with them. It's like, whether it's someone like Rick Rubin and, then expanding to his audience, because we're not talking about financialization. We're talking about, a new art form. And how do you take generative art to a community of people who have absolutely no idea? They're going to look at a mirror by Martin Grasser, and you're going to tell them this was created with an algorithm. And they're going to look at it and go, I thought it was glass.
To me, craftsmanship is how you bridge the gap, because you put a good brand on code-based art. The vision is generative design in general, with the digital fabrication, scalable endeavors. But I started with craftsmanship because there's no one who is going to criticize craftsmanship. And at the end of the day, when I do generative craft, I'm just continuing the conversation between craftsmanship and technology.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Ledger podcast. Today I'm very excited to be bringing to you a conversation between, honestly, some of my favorite people in the space. Ledger's Ian Rogers will be interviewing Ismail Tazi from Trame. Trame is a curated art gallery that offers unique design pieces and artworks with digital provenance. And both will be joined by a man that needs no introduction. Erick Calderon, aka Snowfro, will be with us here in the house at the Ledger studio to talk about this fusion between code and craft. Today we're also celebrating a very special occasion. It's the opening of the 106 headquarters, also Ledger's 10-year anniversary. And for that occasion, ArtBlocks and Trame have taken over the lobby. We call it the ArtBlocks Cafe, and Trame is obviously exhibiting some of its unique pieces in there as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
What a day. It's amazing to have you. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for being here. And I mean that, like I said to Eric earlier, in the very general sense. Like, thank you for being here. When Ismael and I first met, first of all, it was on Telegram. Second of all, like, I had to get my head around, what it is you were trying to do. And I think, what I've learned over the, couple of years now that we've known each other is, there is, and it's always the case, there's ideas and there's execution. Ideas are cheap. Mm-hmm. Execution is hard. Ismael is somebody who is good at execution. I've seen you pull a rabbit out of a hat, multiple times now. But, the idea comes from, an incredible place of, reminds me of what the business model of LVMH is, backing creativity with operational excellence and just firepower on the operation side. And you do that for artists that are trying to bring their digital creative works into physical life. So how did you get interested in generative art? Why marry that with traditional craft? And what is it about your background that led you to this unique place?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having us, and thank you for fixing the weather also in Paris today.
The shaman, I got Louis Vuitton's shaman. It's on point.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Fez, and Fez is the capital of craft in Morocco. It's the capital of culture. So, and I think the innovation in Fez maybe stopped 600 years ago. So I think as I hear about these amazing crafts, amazing what's happening in our history, I've always was thinking, why didn't we innovate? And I think that's something that is central in everything I try to do, is innovate and actually try to pave the way to the future and have an impact. So with generative art, I've always looked at it with generative craft. And what could be the impact of this code-based art, systems art, on the physical space. And I always thought as well that, in the bull market, I couldn't truly understand what needs to be done, what makes sense. But I've always, because I'm born in Fez, tiles is something big. And Eric here, it's something we have in common. So I've always seen tiles also as a system. So that's how things started to click together with the rugs, where every knot could be a pixel, things like this. And yeah, even when I saw like generative art in its digital native form only, I was thinking, how could we go further and do something completely new, innovative, and help artists express themselves even more, and using different media and so on and so forth. So that's how the concept came, pairing generative artists with generational craftsmen and helping artists to express themselves both digitally and physically day one.
It's interesting to me. It reminds me of, we were talking last night about the book Gödel Escher Bach, this eternal golden blade between music and philosophy and science, and computer science in particular. And it's like you think these things are different, right? The craft of like these traditional crafts like tile, as you said, or weaving, and then when you start to break them down, you realize, like, if you're knitting, well, you're doing it kind of one pixel at a time. And we talked with Eric earlier about how on-chain art actually works, and then what you have is you basically have a canvas, and then you have code that populates that canvas. So it's amazing, I think, that you kind of made that leap immediately. Like what was the point where you were exposed to generative art, and then you had this aha moment that you said, wow, this code which is creating pixels could instead be, it could be weaving, it could be creating tile, it could be creating glass or whatever.
In fact, I remember vividly when that happened, and the funny part is that it was at 119 Temple, Rue du Temple, where Trame had its pop-up. Ah. And I was sitting in my desk there, and I see these rug NFTs, NFTs of rugs. And I look at it, and I'm like, this is both interesting and aesthetically horrible.
Oh man!
And then
now I'm curious which one it was.
Yeah,
no, don't say it.
And then I
getting rugged is terrible, to be honest.
Yeah. So, and then I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together in my mind, etc. And I had a bunch of conversations, and that's when I wanted to do a generative rug and a generative tapestry, and that was the first project actually on which ArtBlocks supported us with the tech. And that was our first conversation with Eric in December 2022.
And this is where I have to say, like, first of all, I mean, I was thinking of it today, looking at Eric and Mikol and Seth on stage, and talking to Colby afterwards, talking to Raul. I was thinking about, I was like, man, this is about people. Like, these are all exceptional people. And Ismael, I'm gonna pay you props on this, because I did for when you did your thing around NFT Paris, and Hedvig helped with the scenography. I went and interviewed the artists that you've worked with, and they all have a very similar story. Well, it all started with a call from Ismael. And again, like I said, there are ideas, and ideas are cheap, and there's execution, and Ismael goes from idea to execution like almost no one I've ever experienced. So the fact that you went from that idea, seeing the rug and saying, wait, aesthetically this doesn't work. I see these artists that I love, like Alexis Andre, and I think that their work could be here. So how did it go? You didn't know anybody. You didn't know Eric. You didn't know Alexis.
I didn't know anyone.
You just had an idea. Okay, and then what?
I had an idea, so I needed an artist. I needed where to do it, so the artisan. I needed the tech, and I needed the UX, and I needed where to do it. So I needed it all, So luckily.
What did you have?
No stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Usually you're like
ambition, yeah. So what was cool is that Trame has this design heritage, and we have a good brand in the design world. And I had this.
So you had something. You have design heritage, and you had a good brand in the design world.
Yeah.
That's important. That's important to note. But it's also, like you said, like you're taking an existing company and brand and pivoting on risky innovation. So that's worth noting.
Yes, when I started Trame, the objective was to identify the opportunity at the intersection of technology and culture, starting from design, starting from crafts. And everything I did was put in the bricks. In fact, the third collection of Trame was 3D printing of clay and hand glazed, with the parametric architect Arthur Marmoumani, who did the Galaxy Temple at Burning Man. And that was, for me, the bridge to Web3. So when I had the idea for the tapestry, so I remember on the way to Miami, I called Alexis, who lived in Tokyo.
And we're talking about Alexis Andre.
Max Retweet.
Who is a great artist, has done multiple drops on ArtBlocks. He created the friendship bracelet, which is certainly in terms of volume, the biggest ArtBlocks collection ever, and a very innovative collection as well. I think collaborated with you, Eric, if I'm not mistaken, on the artistic concept. And the great thing about that particular collection was everybody who had any ArtBlocks, anything in their wallet got one, or actually got two. And the idea is gift to someone else at the same time. So anyway, so Alexis is already a quite well-known generative artist when you reach out to him.
Yes, so I reach out to him. He's in. So I have the artist. Then I had good connection to Aubusson. Aubusson is 6 centuries old, the gold standard of tapestry in the world. If you go to any national monuments in France, chances are it's at Aubusson Tapestry, and they have this, an amazing digital jacquard loom that is super sophisticated, and usually if you send if you want to work with them, you need to send them a picture, goes through their design studio, takes anywhere from weeks to many days to digitize it and then run it through the loom. But here, what I told them is that this is going to be very innovative because we're going to be able to produce unique tapestries in series, and we're not going to talk at all to your digitizing team, And so that was very interesting to them. And then I flew to Miami, and I wanted to work with ArtBlocks Engine because I think it was the early days of Engine, and I was amazed by the potential of Engine. Actually, that was the first thing I told Eric. And
well, let's pause on that for just 1 second. It's a good opportunity for you to tell us what is ArtBlocks Engine. I think, and the way that I would describe this to someone who comes from the world I come from, which is the music business, is ArtBlocks Engine is a distributor, right? So you have there are record labels who choose artists and put some sort of backing behind that artist. ArtBlocks Curated is more like that. There's a curatorial board, so there's a bar to get into that. It's more of what I would consider a vertical, whereas ArtBlocks Engine is a horizontal, where it's the tools behind ArtBlocks that can power other people's projects, whether that's Bright Moments or Trame or brands or other people.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I feel like I harp on this all the time, the joy that came out of the beginnings of ArtBlocks in the ArtBlocks Discord, where this is before it became financialized, that moment where people were going down the rabbit hole and discovering generative art and discovering the artists and discovering just kind of this world, this intersection. I truly believe that any brand in the world can bring that moment to his or her audience. And, the last few years in Web3 have been a lot of those brands bringing that to the Web3 audience. And I think it's been a bit of a miss because I feel like the Web3 audience is, frustrated and fatigued and whatever. But the idea of Engine is to say, look, we can bring this beautiful curiosity and delight around generative creation, co-creation, unique things, individual expression to your audience. And we can help you do that. and not only help you do that with the tech, because the tech is more commoditized than anything at this point, but also with some ideas and some ways that we think that you can bring this to your audience.
Best practices,
but also just like concepts. You know, generative goods exist because, you know, other than Isma, I feel like, you know, I kind of got tired of waiting for brands to kind of come with ideas. And, you know, when I met Isma in December at Art Basel, I say this to this day, I think a lot of people get what he talks about, what I talk about. I think people get it, but I don't think there's another person on the planet that truly has the background to do it. It's not just like, oh, I like generative. It's like 20 years in the design industry, understanding distribution, architects, interior design, specifications, contractors, value engineering, like all the things that go into like a project's completion, and then also the art side, and also the fabric, the manufacturing side. And this guy gets it, and he's got it from day one. And I think what's beautiful is that, you know, there's just not a lot of people on the planet that are as bullish. And there's nobody on the planet that can execute. Like this
That's
guy can.
exactly
So
right.
What you said
no,
from the
but
beginning. You know?
it's so interesting because there are like it's true that and I feel this a lot. There are these Venn diagrams, and you know there are not very many of us at the center of these Venn diagrams. Like I see it often because I see that just last weekend I saw something in the skateboard world that was like somehow connected to Web3, and I went, wait, what? Because it just doesn't happen very often that these there are crossover points, but they're thin. I guess is the best way to put it. Which is also, by the way, where there is opportunity. Because if you're in a growing segment of the market, which is where you always want to be, and I think the point you're making, Erick, is a really interesting one, which is, you know, a lot of people are kind of fishing in the same pond over and over again, and I think that some of the work, I think, you know, many of us are trying to do it is to find. We know there are people who really care about craft and care about creativity, and you know, it's a kind of sharing this creative form with them. It's like, you know, whether it's someone like Rick Rubin and, you know, then expanding to his audience, because we're not talking about financialization. We're talking about, you know, a new art form and
culture.
Exactly. And it seems like that's really, how do you think about that in the world of craft? Because I know that you've been taking now, you know, you've done kind of NFT Paris sort of things, but you've also done design fairs, and you'll be here in Paris for, you know, the design fair this week. Like, how do you take generative art to a community of people who have absolutely no idea? You know, they're going to look at a mirror by Martin Grasser, and you're going to tell them this was created with an algorithm, and they're going to look at it and go, "I thought it was glass." Right? How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, so to me, craftsmanship is how you bridge the gap, because you put a good brand on code-based art. And the way, like the vision is generative design in general, with the digital fabrication, scalable endeavors. But I started with craftsmanship because there's no one who is going to criticize craftsmanship. And at the end of the day, when I do generative craft, I'm just continuing the conversation between craftsmanship and technology. Ceramics, I often use this example. There was molding pottery, then you had a major technological breakthrough, which is the wheel, and we start to turn ceramics, and then you had another technological breakthrough, which is electricity, and you can tap a pedal and then turn ceramics. It's still craftsmanship. Another breakthrough, which is with 3D printing of clay. And now I just explain that there are artists who express themselves through code, and it's just another conversation between technology and craftsmanship. Everyone is open to that conversation. For the anecdote, even with the makeup artist, she asked me what I'm doing, and I explained system art, pairing generative artists with craftsmen. And when she heard the word craftsman, she said, "Oh, it's good, I like this." It's because today we need to put a good brand on tech. And for me, the way to do it, the first is through craftsmanship, which immediately works. Yeah. Now, with the design world, we did an amazing project with Bright Moments and Aaron Dalash, and we did these generative French bistro chairs. We built an algorithm that is informed by the physical constraints of weaving, and the output is actually the weaving instructions to the artisan who makes the chair. So at the end of the day, it's a bistro chair, but people can have their unique bistro chair. And the algorithm also is informed by the catalog of colors of Maison Drucker, and Maison Drucker is more than 130-year-old. So everyone loved it. We ended up on Le Monde magazine, which is super exclusive, and a bunch of other media, etc. And that's how I'm able actually to evangelize, for the lack of a better word.
First of all, craft is always technology in some way. I mean, paint, is technology of the moment. Whatever those, if you look at paint over hundreds of years, it's not the same paint year after year. So and I think people always they don't often make the leap between craft. It's almost like craft is anti-tech.
There's also the craftsmanship of being able to write a beautiful algorithm, which I feel like sometimes we lose that a little bit. Like you have to spend. Maybe now with AI it's changed a little bit, but there was a time you had to spend 5 years on learning how to finesse code and like really make it do what you wanted to do. It's not that different than learning how to sculpt or
I'll give you an anecdote that I was standing in front of an LVMH crowd once. This is probably around 2021, and someone said, now if they'd have asked the question, I probably wouldn't have lost my mind, but they said, it can't be craft, it's digital. And I was standing in front of a crowd of people, and I lost my mind. I said, wait, okay, so I get it. You're saying that when you kill a cow and color its skin and stitch it together into a bag, that's craft, right? But when somebody spends years learning to code and creates something of beauty that another person also finds beautiful, and they do a value exchange around that, well, that can't be craft. It's like, I'm sorry. They're either both totally ridiculous things that human beings do, or they're both craft. You can't have it half of the way. So I think that you're doing important work, and you as well, by showing that, because I think it's interesting for me because I studied computer science. So actually, when I look at an algorithmic piece, I have a much better ability to judge it than I do looking at a painting. I actually don't have a lot of place judging a painting, but an algorithmic piece I'm a little better placed to do. So I think that's just something that a lot of that a lot of people miss. And I love the idea that you're kind of giving people that education by introducing them to something. I mean, I think that it is difficult to see these pieces and to look at them. And I think, and you're saying like, look, I can actually instantiate this thing for you in this physical thing. I have more questions, but I think for the audience, it'd be helpful for them to have more examples of what you've done. So we've talked about the tapestries from Aubusson that you did with Alexis Andre. We just talked about the chairs that were done with Laurent Delage and Maison Drucker. And then tell us about the other projects that Trame has done in the generative art space.
So we did a generative mirror project in Venice with Martin Grasser. The goal was to actually make mirrors that are all unique based on language and font and text. I mean, if you know Marty, he's obsessed with text and font. He would actually stop in the middle of Venice and take a picture because he saw a beautiful logo with letters and so on. So the idea was to take the constraints of mirror making. Again, the colors, again the shapes, the length. We always start with the physical, and that informs the code, which generates an output that is then made again physically. And that's something. Marty has a design background, so the output is also very much appealing to, I would say, the design crowd, and also he's our Web3 collector. So again, bridging both worlds. And this is for me really, really important. And that was another project we did. And then we worked with Jeff Davis. I mean, if you see Jeff Davis's work, you want to see how it would project in stained glass.
Yeah.
And we traveled to Chartres. He flew from Arizona to Chartres.
Is there a direct flight?
No.
Okay, just checking.
So Atelier Loire worked with François Morellet on some amazing artwork in Le Louvre and elsewhere, like the best craftsmen. It was an amazing visit with Jeff, and again informed the physical, the code, and we made these beautiful sculptures of stained glass panels. And that was another project that we did. So four projects in a year and a half.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful for people to have an idea and to think about this kind of, you're doing like combinatory creativity. It's matchmaking in a way where you're finding, because it's not only that, it's not as if you have these generative artists and then you go to China for the for the pieces to make something come together. You're finding craftspeople who have actually in all cases far more history than these artists do, because the artists are young and the art form
human,
is young.
And the crafts companies have been around for
and the crafts companies have been around for tens or centuries. So I think I want to make sure that people understand that's what you're doing.
Yes, and actually you might think that Jeff Davis and Bruno from Atelier Loire are very different, but once you see them together, talking about the artwork, discussing, exchanging, they're very much alike. And that's beautiful. Like, that's something that I could witness because I was there together with Hedwig and Tony Chambers, who advised us and on the collection. And that was truly beautiful moments. And for me, those are some memories that we captured in photos that we try to share with our community. Yeah.
Let me ask you both, why do people, let's use the chairs as an example, right? I think the tapestry, which you can see upstairs in the lobby, there's one here. Also, I was going to note that if you go to gallery.so/high gallery, which is Hedwig in my gallery, you can actually read some of the text I wrote. It's good. I like the what they said. It's just a bunch of quotes from the artists, but on Martin Grasser's page and on Alexis's page. I'm not sure if I have Jeff's up there, but there's you'll get a better sense of it, say to the audience. But what is it about owning that chair or a set of chairs that's unique? Like why is that moving to somebody, and why do they want to buy the Maison Drucker chair that has their Oran Delache pattern on it, and not just the one that's in the catalog that was chosen by, their interior designer?
So to me, that's a piece of the future and how the future is going to look like. So it's on-chain, digital provenance, off-screen, so it's physical. And to me, it's very appealing because I can have my own chair where, it's the art, generative art is the art movements of our time, yet fused with this century-old craft knowledge. So for me, that piece is a true embodiment of our humanity in some way, like a big heritage, yet looking forward. So for me, it gives me a lot of energy and
the answer in some ways is storytelling.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that as someone that's kind of, let's say, in the boring old tile world, like I worked with interior designers for 20 years, and those interior designers, like, they wanted the story. They wanted the story, first of all, because the story differentiated me from my competitors. It also differentiates the interior designer from her competitors when she's getting to pass the story along to the owner of a law firm that is then going to have their clients come in and be like, that's a really interesting tapestry. And the owner can be like, well, it's one of 20 made by this generative artist named Alexis Andre. Let me tell you, that is what sells. And it's not just me selling to the designer selling to her client. It's what the client's going to get to tell the story. And that's something that comes part and parcel with generative, is that every piece not only has a story from the artist, but every piece is like, with Alexi, he's got this palette called The Time for Blood, which it's now, after hundreds of projects that I've collected, it's literally, I think, my favorite color palette that any artist has ever released on ArtBlocks, right? And, that's just one output, one color palette. And the story that comes with it, I think, is just like phenomenal. When you, in 20 years, are going to design Miami and you're going to see what I consider to be some of the most highly collectible design objects are going to be the things that Ismael and Trame are doing today. Because not only will they have the story, because this is like this whole kind of art of the times, this is the design of the times, this is the things that our technology is bringing to us today, but they're going to be pretty rare. Because from here, I see a world where You go buy a cool lamp, and it's not limited edition. I mean, you're going to have the limited edition ones. You're going to say, no, that's just a cool lamp. Like, I want to buy that lamp, and it's really cool, and they're all unique, and it's just going to be normal to buy something that's unique. This is like this is the precedent. This is like the future, as he said. And these objects, these initial objects, I think are going to be highly collectible in the future for that reason, because it's like early art blocks. This is early design, like generative design goods. And that story, I think, will persist a lot longer than we're alive.
Yeah. I'm going to invoke Derek Edward Schloss for the third time, maybe even fourth today, because what comes through in what you guys are saying, I think there's a universal truth here. Because whether it is music artists, fine artists, luxury brands, Bitcoin, or CryptoPunks, storytelling plus time equals value.
That's right.
Period. So that's what it amounts to at the end of the day. And what you're doing is you are creating a mashup of these stories, because you're taking this story of heritage, which is pretty damn hard to come by, as we know in the luxury world, and the story of a new art form, which is also exciting but doesn't have the heritage. And you're putting them together into, as you're saying, Eric, something totally unique. And there's kind of no question that has value. The question is who does it have value to, and how much value and when, right? But you're discovering that by being out there. So how is it received? How do people find it, and who are the customers?
Received very well. First of all, we have amazing media coverage. I think we're recognized as true pioneers of both Web3 space and Web2, like traditional design world. So that's really great. Then our collector base is both some Web3 collector, but also some traditional design and art collectors, which is great and balanced. I'm having a good time. I'm good.
Eric and I spoke a lot about CryptoPunks earlier, and there is in the Ledger collection. For those who don't know, Ledger has a very nice collection of art. There are many companies over history that have collected art, and we want Ledger to be one of those companies. But of course, we collect on-chain art. One of the things in our collection is a CryptoPunk, and we're doing something together in Marfa. So wait, first of all, we talked about it earlier, but not on the pod. What goes on in Marfa every year? And then second, what are you doing, and what the hell does it have to do with CryptoPunks and Ledger?
So Marfa is it's like a pilgrimage, I guess, that happens once a year where, I've been going to Marfa with my wife for a long time, since my first kid was born. And every time I went, I'd think, God, I want to do something cool here. It's the most inspirational place to me. Everyone has their own little happy place. To me, it's my happy place. I was highly inspired to push forward on ArtBlocks because of what I saw in Marfa, particularly with Donald Judd's work, which is kind of iterative over instruction based. First year we said, hey, come to Marfa. Assumed 10 people would come. 200 people showed up. Next year 400. Next year 600. Next year maybe 800. It doesn't sound like a lot when you talk about New York events or LA events, but getting to Marfa is really, really difficult. And what it does is it filters out the people to just the people that care. And whether they care about the art, whether they care about the technology, whether they care about all the things, like it's the people there that are there it feels like for the right reasons. And that's really hard to come by within this ecosystem, to find that level of authenticity. So we're really proud of it, and we're really excited that Trame's going to do some fun stuff there, and you've done some wonderful stuff with us in the past, and I'm very excited. Last year I visited Marfa.
We were roommates.
And it was amazing. I felt it. It was my first time, and. It's about those human interactions, and when you meet someone in Marfa, it throws some barriers. Like there's an instant connection.
Yeah.
Because you have no reason to be there, yet you are in Marfa for ArtBlocks Open House, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought next year we're gonna do an activation, and this year it's big. I mean,
Can you talk about it?
Yeah, sure. So we're doing a generative textile collection with A.A. Murakami. A.A. Murakami did actually a drop with Pace on ArtBlocks, and he's also very, very well known in the design space. He's known in the design space as Studio Swine. He's big. So the collection's name is 1,000 Layers of Stomach, and I'm gonna stop there.
I'm scared already.
Yeah, it's fabulous, and that's one we're doing. And then the second one that I'm very excited about is a collection with Ayak Shells, Itzel, Linda Dunia, and Finger Code. So with the three of them, we did a residency in Morocco last year, and we toured Morocco, introduced them to all crafts, and they picked their medium, and we're gonna release this in Marfa. Because to me, today, also in this cultural revolution, coming from Morocco, and I see that African and diaspora artists, African and diaspora youth, do not have access to the same information that we do, and we're a bit kind of left out. So I wanted to do something with these artists in order to inspire others around our continent and to use this medium. Because what I also love about generative art is you just need a keyboard. We all have keyboards.
It's just typing.
Just typing.
That's it.
And with enough ambition and motivation, you can learn, and that's we're bringing it to Marfa, and it's a conversation between Texan deserts, Moroccan deserts, and tents, and I'm gonna stop there. And then the third activation we're doing actually started as a gift to Erick. When I was in Venice, I realized that this mirror making is amazing, and it could be like a beautiful punk. So I did this punk.
1478 has a mirror.
Yeah, with his punk, and we put it in our apartment in Place des Vosges, beautifully styled by Edwig in February during NFT Paris, and everyone lost their shit in front of that mirror, you know, and then I realized right there that started the conversation around the punks the right way. Usually when I want to talk about punks, I pull up my phone, this is a zombie, this is an ape, and I lose attention. Whereas that mirror, my normie friends yes, I have normie friends who visited Place des Vosges, they all look at that and they're like, this is fucking amazing. Sorry for the F word.
You're good.
Okay, thanks. So we're taking Ledger's punk, and we did it as a mirror, and then we're gonna do this activation around also the flex with the Ninstall. So that could be very, very interesting.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
And hopefully I won't lose Scott Rogers' motorcycle seat again this year.
Hopefully, and you're gonna DJ, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
This is a perfect place to close it off. But what I think we should do now is I think we should go upstairs, and you should show us the tapestry.
Sure.
And Marty's mirror to go with it. And then we're going to need Erick to give us a tour of the tiles of 106.
That's right, one by one. It's a bunch of Patricio Cruel.
Let's segue into that. But thank you guys. This is
Yeah,
a
thank
really
you very much,
this is super good and a great
Thank
story.
you, Erick.
A great story.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and watching to our Ledger podcast in our newly launched format. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow the show wherever you're listening to it. We'd really appreciate it because it'll help us help you make the best out of our content.